Back in action to talk about Law 11 from the laws of human nature,
Correct.
and we're on 11 of 18.
Wow.
So Law 11 is to know your limits, the law of grandiosity. Know your limits, the law of grandiosity.
Yeah.
I looked up the definition just to, for those who don't know, I wasn't too sure what grandiosity meant. Definition is the quality of being impressive and imposing in appearance or style, especially pretentiously so, pompous superiority or pretentiousness. That's what comes out. It's impressive and imposing in appearance or style, especially excessively grand or ambitious. Just a couple ideas. So this is the law of grandiosity. So, I mean, have you encountered somebody, let's say, who's fallen to the what would you call it? Um,
The toxicity of success.
the toxicity. Yeah, they fell prey to this law of grandiosity. Have you come across anyone like that, or have you experienced it maybe in yourself?
Well, I've come across people like that. And, as you go forward, let's say in business, or let's say you're a surgeon and you have these gifted skills, you cut just right. You saw the skin and the muscles and the fascia and everything else just perfect.
Yeah.
Because it comes to you, you only need to see it once and you learn it. Some people are gifted in certain areas. We touched on that in the previous law. Okay.
Right.
Um,
Downplaying your gifts.
yeah. So it can get to you, and it does get to a lot of people. And so you just need to be careful. Um, but some people say they have the Midas touch, right? The golden touch. It's also said in this one,
Hmm.
where everything you touch seems to turn to gold. And then you get this air of superiority or grandiosity. And when you do that, it's the beginning of the end. You don't know it right there and then because it's part of human nature. You're not making any mistakes. Everything that you're doing is perfect, turns out perfect. And then you lose touch with reality. The
Yeah,
bottom line
that's the big thing that I got out of this. You lose touch
with
with
reality.
reality. Your feet are no longer on the ground.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why I guess the saying "stay grounded, stay
Stay
humble."
grounded.
Don't get too big of a head,
Yeah,
because you get to a point where you think everything you do turns to gold, everything you touch turns to gold. So you take on such a big project or endeavor, and that's the fall.
right.
That's the end because you overstepped.
And it's
Right.
happened, and I think it happens to all of us. And I'm here to tell you it has happened to me, okay?
Mm,
Where you take on more than you can chew,
right.
and based on your prior record, you think that you can do it,
Yeah.
and then you come crashing down.
That's something that as I was going through this chapter, I was thinking, what's the difference? Because confidence and grandiosity, they're, let's say, almost like cousins or hand in hand. Confidence is a good thing,
Right,
and successes build your confidence. Robert Greene says it. What happens though is that you become maybe too confident, and then that's where you become grandiose. But
correct.
it is good to be confident, and people who are grandiose are, I think, extremely confident in themselves, but to a fault at that point.
Right.
um I was thinking, where have I encountered this? And I'll tell you that previously, working in a large corporation in sales, they would get the top people in sales, and they would put them on a stage,
Right.
and they would have you speak in front of a bunch of people at conventions, and everyone was asking your advice, and those people on stage were looked up to, right? And I always kind of, I was never on stage, but I would always think about, the moment that you hit some success and you stand out, the company's going to pick you out and put you on a stage. And that messes with your head, I felt, because everyone's looking at you like you have the answers, and then you can begin to believe that you have all the answers. And I don't know how you would, stay in touch with reality and stay humble, because everybody's telling you you're amazing. The whole company, a national company, is telling you you're the top, you're the top, you're the top. They put you in lights. So I can see how it's easy to fall into that trap, and you're not even doing it yourself. You're in a corporation that wants to reward the winners and can create this grandiosity, this grandiose feeling. And so that was something I always saw, and I thought I want to stay away from that. But in those settings, it's very difficult to stay away from that, because they want to pluck you out and use you as an example. But now it starts messing with your head. You're like, oh yeah, I am different, right? And what Robert Greene says, to stay with reality, is to you you realize there was luck involved in your success. You realize that a lot of hard work involved in your success, and it wasn't that you're just different.
I agree. Look, I started working for this Fortune 500 company,
Yeah.
okay? And, I came into the insurance world and I really didn't know much about it. All I knew is that I wanted to make money. I wish I could say, oh, I got into insurance to help others. That wasn't my original thought. My original thought is, I'm broke. I need money to survive. Oh my God, what am I going to do?
Hmm.
Um, and I looked around me, and all the insurance agents that I knew were doing exceedingly well. And I said, well, there's got to be something here. So my initial involvement to get into the insurance business was to make money, not necessarily a very honorable cause, let's say. I needed to make
Provide
money,
for your family,
provide for my family.
and you're
Okay.
doing it in a legal way.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But some people, I've
But I
heard
hear
some
you.
people say, hey, I got into this because I wanted to help other people. For example, if you talk to nurses, nurses are the most giving people in the world, amongst others.
You can make I think, an argument.
Firemen.
I think you can make an argument for any of these. They became a doctor because their parents pushed them to be one. They weren't trying to be the most, they weren't trying to help the world. Now, there are the doctors and the nurses that
Yeah,
did, and I'm not taking that
it's
away,
up to
but
the individual,
I think
right?
it's up to the individual.
But there's certain people. Look, firemen, medical
I hear you.
techs,
I hear you.
emergency EMTs. These people that are, you know,
They have a
day in
huge
and
heart.
they have a huge nurses.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you call it? Physical
It
therapists?
exists in insurance too. You just weren't one of those. You went in to make money,
Right.
and that was your motivation.
Fortunately, I can tell you that very soon after that, I realized that the money was a byproduct of being a good professional.
Right.
And in order to become a good professional, you needed to provide whoever you were sitting with whatever they actually needed.
Right.
So I came to the realization that I was there to help people pretty quickly down the line,
Yeah.
you know? And fortunately, um, the good Lord, I started doing well from the beginning. So the focus changed
Now, did
dramatically.
that get to your head because you
Well, that's
were
what I'm
doing well
getting
at
at.
the beginning?
So there was a product, there was the guy that made a recommendation for me to get hired, he was selling health insurance through the company. And the company was becoming a powerhouse in health insurance. They didn't know the company. The company was not known for that. It was an auto. and home type of company, mostly auto. Okay. Anyway, and so make a long story short, because of his tutorship, because of his mentorship, I was able to learn a few tricks within the presentations of these products. And although I got hired late April and there were only like 7 months left of the year, I sold a ton of health insurance products. And when the following year came over, there was this big gathering in LA with all the agents from all the districts, and they had a huge 20-foot screen and whatever. And I didn't know it, and I had made it to number 3 in the nation. And they plastered my picture onto the big screen, and I was able to see that. And I didn't know that my stats, I was so concerned in learning and in selling and in providing, a good product and service and blah blah blah. I didn't pay attention to anything. I just knew I was selling and I was making money, which was my original goal to get in there.
Mm-hmm.
My thought was I'm going to make money here and I'm going to go back to my previous career, which was associated with medicine. Anyway, when I saw that picture, I will never forget it. It was a great, fantastic feeling. And I thought, wow, I made it to number 3 in the nation. And I had people come up to me and shake my hand and, hey, can I get your business card? I'd like to ask you some questions. And sure, sure. It was, I mean, I got taken from, I didn't think I was anything special, right? And I got taken from very low uh, status, let's say, all of a sudden my picture's up there with all the agents in Southern California or something like that. There were like 3,000, I forget. And
In
so
the lights.
it was incredible. But let me tell you what happened the following week. People that were very open to me and giving me advice all of a sudden closed down a little bit, a lot. The doors that were open for me before were closed.
You weren't
I
a threat
couldn't,
at the time.
I became, I guess, a threat to some people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And other people were calling me for advice, and I was not sure of how things worked exactly. I just knew how to sell. Anyway, it was a very interesting situation, and it takes you away from reality.
Yeah. I can see that.
Now, my following 2 to 3 months after that were horrible.
Hmm.
I wasn't able to keep up the production that I had before.
Hmm.
So I think it messes with your head, and it even throws, if you're not ready for it, like I never thought I'd be 3 in the nation, right? So it messes with your brain. So I'm here to tell you, yes, it's hard to keep grounded, but you have to do it because at the end of the day, if you want to create something big in life, you need a group of people to help you. It's not you by yourself.
Yeah.
It's a group of people working together for a common goal, for a vision that maybe you have set forward. Okay? And definitely luck has a play in it. It's not all you, man.
Yeah.
And so, but that happened, and it was very interesting to me. I'll never forget it. Um, Let me tell you,
Yeah,
it lifts you.
I can see it being humbling and brings you back down a fall from, let's say, graces.
Oh, for sure,
Um,
for sure.
so, maybe that's a blessing in disguise. Um,
That's why when you have these young singers that
yeah.
have been blessed by God with a tremendous voice, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like Bocelli and stuff like that. I'm not talking specifically about him, but when they're young and they rise to stardom,
Yeah.
all of a sudden they get in. And that's what happened to Michael Eisner, which was the case study for this law, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. He went from ABC to heading Paramount Pictures film studio, and then he made it which became a success because of the movie Grease and Saturday Night Fever, a couple of those. And then from there, he moves to Disney. And yeah, Robert Greene was highlighting how he was a successful um, executive by the age of 34. At the age of 34, he was already in a high position at ABC.
Right. He was hitting prime time for ABC,
So,
prime
he,
time broadcasting. So he had control of what was coming out.
very powerful,
Very powerful
very
man.
successful early on.
34.
Yeah. And so I wonder if some of some of the this issue with grandiosity, and it's kind of like a godlike complex is what I was thinking. You think that everybody's praising you and you think that everything you do is works out, and so you develop almost like a godlike. But I wonder if his early success was part of that feeling. It didn't take let's say like a long time to get there. He got that success at an early age, and I wonder if maybe you're not ready yet, like you said, these young singers, uh or young actors that they get fame at, like Johnny Depp and DiCaprio and all these people, that they get fame at such an early age. And I wonder if your mind is not ready to process that, or you have to do things that allow you to process it, like meditations. Marcus Aurelius is an emperor and everyone's telling him he's a god, and he had to do things to bring himself back down. I always thought having somebody in your life that kept you humble, that checked you when your head got too big, was a good thing. But actually, in this chapter, Robert Greene didn't even talk about that. I didn't catch anything where it was a person that was, like, a lot of times you hear it's maybe like your father, you know, will tell you, hey, you're not that good, or their mother. Like, there were a lot of famous people, famously, like, I think Kanye West was very close to his mother, and when his mother was in his life, she kept him somewhat, it seemed like, grounded somewhat, even though he had this personality of wanting to do huge things. But once she passed, it seems like he went astray. And this chapter doesn't say to rely on anybody, but I think it's important, if you have those people in your life, also that's helpful to kind of bring you back down when maybe you're starting to feel grandiose, you know.
It's a difficult call because the people that do huge things, usually there's a big ego that comes along.
Sure.
Okay. Now we talked about having a big ego is not all that good. Okay. You have to keep it in check. But these people that do huge things in life, like the Elon Musks and so forth, okay? He just, something just happened recently, a couple months ago, where he recaptured the biggest satellite ever coming back from Earth. I think it's like the size of a 10-story building. I hope I'm not misquoting this, but there were two arms that grabbed it, and it's never been done before in the history of space travel. Okay,
Hmm.
people like this, um, I don't know if the ego or the grandiosity feeds and funnels this energy so that they can produce these huge things that ultimately bring out the betterment of society, but can potentially destroy them
Hmm.
individually. So, it's a hard thing to say because some of these, I know some surgeons, they're absolutely brilliant, and there's a degree of cockiness that goes with that,
Hmm. Yeah.
you know?
Sure.
And so, where is the best mix? I don't know.
But having
I don't know.
having people like, let's say, Elon, who help create, let's say, a lot of innovation and have a big ego, does society benefit from those people?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that Robert Greene talks in this chapter, and I guess you can argue, and I don't know that I agree with it entirely, is that he says that when you have, let's say, massive success in one lane, you jump into another lane and you think that you're going to have the same success in that lane. Now, we've seen many business owners that they have one business and all of a sudden they want to open a restaurant, for example.
You're looking at one,
Okay. Yeah, yeah, you've been in that. Or they want to open a some side business
and it flopped.
and it flops
I
because they
it
thought
messed me all up.
you thought you were going to have, let's say, the same success.
I
Now,
had a little extra money and I invested in a pizza business,
mhm.
and
But you look at, let's say,
it flopped.
an Elon Musk, for example, who starts in PayPal and then he ends up, buying Tesla and then
Yeah, he
SpaceX.
did buy, but
It was an existing
yeah,
company,
you're
but
right.
he
You're right.
made it to what it is
You're
today.
right. You're right.
And then, well, he took what he made from the sale of PayPal, and I think he went all in,
He
and he
did it.
bought Tesla, and then
No, there was another company that he did, right?
Solar City,
Oh, okay, okay.
and then you got all these. Now he's bought Twitter, X, which
Well,
is a
he's got
different
that
lane. It's a different Neuralink.
Neuralink, which is absolutely
But these are
incredible.
not all, I think, I don't see them all within the same lane. So
Lane.
it's contradictory to what Greene is saying in this chapter.
But Elon Musk is also a genius,
Right.
very
That's true. He's
eccentric. So you're picking the one person on earth that he can probably do just about anything. I mean, I read a very long
so he's an
article.
exception then.
He is an exception.
So
We're not picking
we
the,
shouldn't feel that we can do that.
no, you can't. I'm here to tell you you can't. I had a little extra money and I invested money in a pizza place that was doing very well.
Yeah.
And the minute we took it over with my other partner, we started hurting. And then a few years later, we had to close it down and lost a lot of money on it.
So what do
So,
you say to the case of people saying, "Hey, you should diversify."
okay, there's a big controversy over that. A lot of people say diversify, and a lot of people say don't do it.
Diversify your investments.
Here's my 2 cents. And my 2 cents are, what are they worth? Literally
Two
two
cents.
cents. Okay? So, but here's my 2 cents on that. When you're making money and you're in your lane is whatever it is that you have chosen to as a career, let's say, and you're doing well in it.
You're focused. You're specialized.
You're
You're
making money
confident.
and
You're
you're in
making
your
money.
lane.
Yeah.
Okay? Before you come out of your lane, make sure you stabilize yourself. Make sure that you have a good savings, to last you, let's say, a year or two. Not 3 months or 6 months like people say. You better have a year or two, especially if you have employees and payroll. You have to accommodate for those people. It's your responsibility to employ those people and make sure those people have a job.
Mm-hmm.
So before you jump into anything else to diversify, become, let's say, close to a powerhouse in what you're doing. And then you can look at other sources of revenue. That's my 2 cents. If you're
Some people do it too soon. Then
too soon,
I see.
and I respect Patrick and David a lot, and he agreed. I think he agrees with that. He's diversifying now
Right.
into um, baseball cards. He buys them and he makes $1 million on a baseball card. He didn't do that when he was starting.
No.
He First of all, he couldn't do it because he didn't have the money, but he didn't have the knowledge either. But when you have something that is, let's say, somewhat autopilot, where you can come in and you can see the numbers and it's still doing well, okay, continue. You have
Systems.
process, there you go, systems in place, processes in place that people follow. It's a formula to success, let's say,
Yeah.
right? Then you can, pick your head over the horizon a little bit and start looking,
To
and be
diversify.
very careful where you jump into, because look, I opened up a pizza place and I lost a lot of money on it. It hurt me.
Well, one of the things I like that he brought up, Green, is that when you do take on a new project, let's say you had a massive success, and he was bringing up the movie industry. He brought up a lot of Disney.
Oh,
You know, he specifically he was talking about Eisner, who had this other person that was also in Disney called Jeffrey Katzenberg.
yes. Jeffrey Katzenberg did The Lion King.
He did The Lion King, which became the one of the most successful movies that Disney had made. I mean, I
It's
don't
the most successful movie ever made.
ever made.
Yes.
Okay.
The Lion King is the most successful movie ever made
And
by
after
Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Katzenberg being involved heavily in Lion King, it was his idea and everything. Eisner goes and fires him.
There you go. I mean,
So Eisner felt threatened by Katzenberg, that Katzenberg was gunning for the top position in Disney, and he ended up firing him. Now, if you go to the 48 Laws of Power, they would say never outshine the masters, Law 1, right?
yeah, but if you don't outshine the master because you're worried about this and that and whatever, then you preclude yourself from making the most successful film ever made in the history of films.
I agree. So, what's the right thing to do there?
The right thing to do there is you forget about it and you go with your,
Well, he ended up okay. History, I guess, worked out good for him because Katzenberg gets fired.
and
Um,
he opens up.
Eisner doesn't care how it looks that he fires him, and so and the reason the well, he fires him, and then Katzenberg ends up suing Disney,
Yes.
and he wins a $280 million settlement.
And so, to our subscribers, you gotta read the book.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta read the chapter because we don't have enough time here to get into the details that produce the golden nuggets that may
Yeah,
change your lives. But here's the point.
yeah.
Michael Eisner had agreed to pay Katzenberg $90 million. It was an agreement that was going to get settled out of court. Okay. And then all of a sudden, he gets this influx again of this air, this wind of grandiosity, and says, wait a minute. I don't know this guy 90 million. Why should I pay him 90 million? I made him. And refuses to, he goes back on
He
the agreement.
reneges on it. Yeah,
Then he gets taken to court by Katzenberg, and a jury of his peers finds that, hey, no, you were wrong on this, but now you're going to pay him $280 million.
that's what they settled for. Wow.
So if our viewers read this
Can you
chapter,
imagine that?
oh,
Now Eisner, I looked him up. He's still extremely wealthy.
right, and he's done things that other people couldn't do,
Yeah.
right? Oh, right. But if our viewers read the chapter,
Yeah.
um, what Robert Greene has done is he made a case study of
Eisner.
Paramount, of Eisner,
Oh,
of
Eisner. Michael
Michael
Eisner.
Eisner.
Yeah.
He made a case study, and when I was reading it, I thought, why so much detail here? Why so much detail, Robert Greene? Why?
Yeah, the first good almost half of the chapters on that Michael Eisner.
Why so much detail? Then he answers my question.
What is that?
As you see his rise to success, and then Robert Greene shows his decline, you can start seeing the mistakes that he was making,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Eisner,
Building the
his
Euro
destruction.
Disney in France.
Yeah,
He said that was a massive failure.
instead of going for Barcelona, he went from Paris for Paris, and the French didn't
Take
produce,
to it.
didn't take to it like he thought he would.
He spent way more than should have been spent.
He destroyed himself, and you can see the destruction. That's why Robert Greene took the time to show the buildup, right?
Mm-hmm.
The increase to the mountaintop, and then he shows all the mistakes that he made, and it was beautiful. I understood it after, because I tell you, it was tedious to me a little bit, right? All this detail, why all this detail on this guy? I
Yeah.
get it, he's good. But then he shows you his destruction.
Yeah.
And it was brilliant.
Yeah, he
That's
was.
why Robert Greene is Robert Greene.
Yeah, you used the word, I think you used the word like toxic or intoxicating, and that's what happened, that the limelight got became intoxicating for Eisner. He just wanted that limelight. Now Robert Greene even says that this goes back to childhood,
Right.
and it's interesting. But um what ends up happening eventually is Roy Disney uh, tells Eisner to step down because things weren't working out anymore. Eisner somehow gets Disney kicked out of the board or something like that.
Well, what he does is he goes because okay, so Roy Disney comes to Michael Eisner and says, "Hey, you need to resign." And Michael Eisner says, "What are you talking about? I've made you millions and all these people here.
Yeah,
What is it? What impetus you have for impetus or whatever the word that he used?" And he says, I'm not." And he goes to the board of directors, and he was still very powerful within there, and he gets um,
Roy Disney.
Roy Disney fired.
Off the board, kicked off the board. Yeah,
Okay, kicked off the board.
yeah,
And then he begins this thing called Let's Save Disney. Roy Disney starts this.
right.
And that gains strength and power. And then it forces Eisen, Michael Eisner to resign in 2005.
Yes,
On September of 2005, Roy Disney got, or the Disney Corporation had so much pressure that, Michael Eisner resigns. And bear you, he had already had an open heart surgery. So all this moving up the mountain and the struggles coming down the mountain created such stress level in his life that he ended up having um, open heart surgery prior to that.
wow.
And he created a lot of enemies. For example, the owner of Pixar, right? Which was Pixar. Pixar. The owner of Pixar was Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
Remember his story too. He got kicked out of,
Apple.
okay?
Yeah,
So, but on his way down, Pixar made Toy Story. And Steve Jobs comes out afterwards and says, "I will never work with Disney ever again."
because of Eisner and his micromanaging.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So if you read the chapter, folks, you're going to see his build up, bear with it, and then you're going to see the beauty of the destruction that, not the beauty, but his destruction that he brought onto himself
yeah.
by every move he made. And, looking at it from the outside, you say, "Oh, God, that's such a mistake." But you're Michael Eisner, extremely powerful, extremely successful, this flare of grandiosity. You can't see it.
You don't see it happening.
You don't see it happening.
What do you think about?
Interesting, huh?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's a tremendous
What do you think
chapter.
about the take on him taking it back to childhood? That you're constantly seeking the like approval or acceptance of your mother, and that's Robert Greene is saying that that's why people have these pursuits, that we all have it, right? He should accept we all have this need for grandiosity. We just need to keep it in check, kind of like we all have envy. You asked me the other day, and I think you stepped away, but I said, envy, I think, is just based on the what we've done in our reading. It's a human nature, so
Yeah.
everybody has that. It's built into us because,
It's an emotion that we all
yeah. But
have
you
it.
want to turn it, right, envy into admiration,
Correct.
and that's
That's
in
the
the
hacking
previous
part of it,
in the
right?
previous chapter, Law 10. But yeah, that's the hacking. So with this, we all have, it's acceptance that we all have these feelings that we want grandiosity. What do you think though about him tying it to childhood?
You know, Robert Greene is an exceptional human being. He's done tremendous research. Okay, so these are my 2 cents.
Of course.
but
That's
whatever's
what I'm asking you.
right. So I don't totally agree with that, you know, because you're taking everything back to childhood. And
Yeah, almost every
okay,
chapter.
I know, and I get it. I get it. You know, there's scientific stuff out there that says that by the time the child is 5 or 6 years old, his character is already set. Okay. And it does a lot of things go back to childhood. But sometimes I feel it's a little bit of a cop out because when do you take responsibility for your own actions?
Yeah.
And you know, I mentioned this before in another
Yeah.
podcast. At what point you stop
Playing the victim.
complaining and blaming your parents for everything that happens in your life, you know?
Yeah.
At what point do you say, you know what, I did it, it's my fault? Oh, you know, how did I get this? Oh, it goes back to the time that I wanted that ice cream and my mom didn't give it to me. And I spent 3 weeks without sleeping. It was such a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
You know, I don't totally believe it, but I know that we're gonna get we're gonna get a lot of people telling us on the comments that I'm wrong, and maybe I am, you know. But you know, I mean, at what point, man?
Right.
At what point do you take responsibility for your own actions? You know, you made a right turn, and there's a reason why you did that, and there's consequences to that. If you would have made a left, you know, what's that movie that I like a lot? One of my favorite ones that, you know, he's a fireman.
Oh, frequency?
Frequency.
Yeah.
Go see Frequency, guys. The movie Frequency is one of my favorites. It's a fantastic movie, and there's a point in the movie where the son is able to come back from the future and tells the father, Dad, you died in the fire. But that's because,
Spoiler.
yeah, in the boiler,
Spoiler alert.
you you made a right turn and that part of the building caved in on you or something. If you make a left, you will survive.
Yeah.
And then he ends up remembering that and he looks to the right and he goes, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to take, his instinct
He's
was to,
able to change the past.
and then he changes the future too.
Right.
It's not, it's a really, it's a father and son movie. It's a relationship for a father and son. It's called Frequency. It's fantastic. And I recommend it.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. Go see
Um,
it, gentlemen, ladies.
the grandiose leader. So, I mean, I couldn't help but think of politics, especially right now that there's an election in a couple weeks and all this. I mean, I see that in both people running, and I see the grandiose leader, and he's talking about
And everybody's
this.
talking about it. Everybody
What do
is
you mean?
talking. I just got back from Arizona.
Oh, the election? Oh yeah,
Everybody.
yeah.
I was all over
Well,
the
of
place
course, yeah.
in restaurants and this and that and casinos.
Sure,
Everybody from all walks of
sure.
life is talking about the elections. It's the biggest thing. It's
Of
like football
course,
now.
yeah. Um, it's a cult-like thing that both uh people running, and I don't know if it's I haven't been as involved in previous elections, but it seems like each side has a cult that they're gonna stay with them through and through,
No matter
no
what.
matter what. And actually, that's I feel like in this chapter, Greene is talking about specific people, even though he doesn't name them. It's pretty clear he's talking about specific people in politics. Um, what I like is he gets into the practical grandiosity, which is what we were talking about. You got to come to terms, the reality of and the needs of grandiosity that you have. You got to concentrate it to make simple goals that you can achieve. You want to take on challenges that are slightly above your skill level, and that has to do with building confidence. And he's saying that that's called practical grandiosity. So you take them a little bit over your skill level. Um, every once in a while, you want to let loose that grandiose energy. So go big on, let's say, a project and allow it to be like a wild horse that you let out every once in a while and then bring it back in. Which, by the way, when he was explaining that, how difficult would it be if you you take a big risk and you succeed at it? How difficult would it be to rein that back in? I think that that could potentially be a trap because let's say you did take a huge risk, you succeed, you're gonna want to do that again.
And why not? We can't send a message out there that yeah, no, you got to go out with guns blazing. That's my theory. You
Okay.
you have to do it because if you're going to start worrying about, oh, I'm going to take too big of a step, or this, the people that are creating big things in life are not thinking like that.
I agree.
You and
But when does it become, let's say, grandiose? When does it become, I guess you need to figure that out for yourself, right? But like when is it too big of a thing and you fall and it ends up being the Michael Eisner story? Or is Michael Eisner, when you look at his life as a whole, is it a success? So even though he, let's say, fell from graces, I mean, I looked him up 2 years ago in 2022, he was selling the most expensive property in California ever sold. It was $200 million in Malibu.
what he owned it,
He had it for sale. Didn't sell.
but
But
was
at
he the
that,
owner of that
yeah,
pro?
he was the
Okay,
owner. He was
okay,
the owner.
okay.
So the guy is he's involved in football, owner of some sort of football club and everything. So as a whole, would you say I mean, he's successful in business.
Uh, Well, look, so we've come to this point before. Define success. Success is having $200 million in the bank. Some people might disagree.
Yeah.
You have $200 million in the bank and you are apparently successful in business. If
Hmm.
let's say you didn't inherit that
Hmm.
you built that, well, there's a lot to be said about that because to make $200 million and have it in the bank takes a lot of energy and effort. So, yeah, you're successful economically.
Right.
But in the process of his career, he hurt a ton of people. He hurt a lot of people. In fact, when he went from ABC to Paramount, he fired 1,000 people. Now, he replaced some of those people with people from Paramount. Now, was he correct in firing those people? Did he fire 1,000 lazy people? Or were there some good people that got hurt in the process because of the changing of powers?
Right.
And you see these,
Again, you see like Musk cleaned house with Twitter and X
right,
and fired a ton of
he
people.
fired 1,000 people,
So maybe they're similar in that sense.
but there's going to be some casualties. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is the message we should send forth is not to be fearful of success. Go out there guns blazing and do what you think you're capable of,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know? Now, some people have different formulas, Mike. For example, let's say you're not good in computers, okay? Well, it goes back to the law, right? Know your limitations, right? So you're not very good with the computers, hire someone that's really good in the computer so that you don't have to spend the time to figure out what to do. You hire somebody and that person handles your computer department so that you can do what you're really good at and bring in the grandiose revenue to
Well,
the company.
I agree with what you're saying. I'm not saying to be fearful of success. When you achieve that success, however, not letting it get to your head.
Okay, well, Robert Greene says one thing that is really important, and I think it's the key to everything.
What's that?
He says, wipe your path clean. Once you hit that success level,
Hmm.
let's say you went for this business, it was an acquisition, you got it, okay, great. Don't dwell in your glory. Give yourself, a week or two, take a little vacation here and there and give yourself, your glorious, pompous, whatever feeling because you did well, right?
Hmm.
And then come back to reality and wipe the slate clean. He says it
Yeah.
in the chapter. Wipe the slate clean. Don't look at your previous successes and then now you start from the bottom again and you go forward.
In
Yeah, it's
theory,
hard to
in
do.
theory, it sounds real good.
Yeah, I know, I know.
I just don't know how realistic that is.
Right. But
I
if
think
you
it takes
did that,
a lot of mindfulness, like really analyzing yourself, like what am I doing here? Am I using my past success and maybe making a bad decision? I'm not thinking logically, practically.
well, I know I'm here to tell you that I've made mistakes, and because of my ignorance with regards to some of these laws early on in my business life, I remember specifically, without giving, you know, I came to a portion where there was this particular property that I wanted, and the bank was giving me a very difficult time, and I said, you know, what the heck, I can do this. And I looked, I kid you not, I looked at my past history, and I said, you know, I've done this before.
Mm.
I went for it, and it was one of the biggest mistakes I've made. Okay. Fortunately, it didn't take me down, but it definitely stopped me from continuing my growth. It it was one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in business, and you know it, and the kids know it because I share everything, right? Because I feel it, if you can learn something from my mistakes,
Yeah.
which I've made plenty. So that thing set me back 10 years. And when I said 10 years, that's a whole decade. Somebody out there is going to say, oh my God. Well, it stopped me from moving forward. And since the whole world is still moving forward, you've been sit back.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not that you fall from grace. That's terrible.
Yeah.
But you're not moving forward.
Stagnant. That's
You're
not good
stagnant.
either.
That's a setback because the whole world's still moving forward.
Yeah.
So you know you didn't fall, but you're not moving forward, so you're it's a, you know
Right.
and it took 10 years to come back, all right, for me.
Yeah.
Now I'm 65, okay, so now I'm very careful. The other thing that I can tell everybody out there, and this applies across the board, whether you're a surgeon, you know, an architect, an engineer, whatever business you run, a landscaping company, an electrician, whatever it is that you're running, the other issue is be careful with overextending yourself.
Yeah.
Been there, done that. It's extremely dangerous, and it will ultimately affect your health.
Over leveraging.
Over leverage. It will affect your health,
Well,
which is the most important thing of your life. Not the money, not the accolades, not the trophies, not the parties, not the cars, and not the houses. You know, your health.
yeah, overextending, over
Overextending.
leveraging, borrowing more than maybe we should, taking on more risks, spreading ourselves too thin. I mean, these are
Is it
recurring themes that
is it
we,
worth it? Is it worth it?
well, you're saying
If
no.
well, if you're in your 20s, some people would argue, "Oh yeah, go for it." When are you going to do it? When you're in your 50s? No. In your 50s, you're going to be a little bit more conservative.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so if you're in your 20s, you have time to recoup. That's the theory for a lot of people.
Overextend yourself.
And I have a tendency to agree with that. Go for the gusto, guys. You can't be fearful
Yeah.
of life.
Well,
You
highest
know?
risk, highest reward type
Right.
of thing, and when you're younger, can afford those high risk situations. Like you're saying now, you're a lot more careful where you step, how you step,
Right.
because you don't want to fall into that situation.
No, and I have people that work for me that I feel they're like family now after all these years. I'm responsible for these people, for their salaries, for, you know, you have a greater degree of responsibility.
Yeah.
And there are unbeknown things coming, okay? What do you call them? Asteroids that come and go.
Yeah, you can't predict
You
everything.
can't predict everything. So,
We'll
but
wrap
don't
it.
be fearful. Fear is not
Fear's
something
not
that,
fear's
no,
not
man,
good.
go for it, go for it,
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
for it. Especially if you're young, go for
Go
it.
for it and just be aware
Read these
when
books.
when you hit your success, be aware, hey, luck was involved, right?
and and realize that you weren't the only one involved in that success.
Right.
I would be nothing today without the people that surround me, that help me.
Of course.
I would be nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing. I would not have the time to do this podcast. I would not have the time to research,
Yeah.
you know?
The I don't know if you we could wrap it up. There was one quote, and at the very ending, Robert Greene talks about the sublime, and he says, "This is a quote from the book. You are not disturbed by your relative smallness, but rather ecstatic at the sense of being a drop in this ocean."
You're going to have to do that one again. Can you?
You're not disturbed by your relative smallness, but rather ecstatic at the sense of being a drop in this ocean.
Wow.
And he's saying that that's the sublime, is realizing that we're here for a very short amount of time. We are limited, right, on how long we have and what we can do to a certain extent within that time period. But instead of um, thinking, oh, we're so small and insignificant, you take that and you turn it into ecstatic, being ecstatic at the sense that we're just a small little thing in this time period and do something with that. I think that's a positive message. And he's saying that we're the only species that we know of that is aware of this. We're the only ones aware of this consciousness, sentient. So we're the only species that's aware that we're here for a very finite amount of time, and that should bring us, let's say, joy and motivation to do something in that time period.
You know what you just reminded me of? Are we the only species that know that?
I mean,
So did you know about that gorilla that could do sign language?
I'd seen it. Yeah, I've
Her
seen
name
it.
was Coco.
Yeah,
K O
super smart.
K O. So that gorilla, um, look it up, folks. But I think she had a vocabulary of 600 words or something like that, that she could sign language, or maybe 500. But some of the stuff that she said was mind-boggling. She would turn around and say, "Hey, I'm very sad because you're destroying this earth. You're doing this to Mother Earth. I'm really sad." She would go like this. And this is a gorilla.
Wow.
Her name was Coco. K-O-K-O. Look it up. It's one of the most interesting things.
I mean, I'm not. Oh no,
I know,
that's
I know.
amazing.
We're the only species
No,
that
I mean, I
I
don't
got
think
it.
we should disqualify, nature from its intelligence either.
Oh no,
So
we're no match for animals. No match.
yeah, I
I
don't.
mean, we need to build a seismograph to know that there's an earthquake coming. Dogs and cats know they're coming. All you have to do is pay attention to their behavior.
Yeah.
They can feel the vibrations of the earth, and they start getting squeamish and this and that. There's another animal that ancient in ancient times that they would keep an eye on that guy, and they knew when tsunamis were coming.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
we are no match for a mother, and that's a way of keeping yourself humble.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think that we should think, but
Oh
as
my
far as that we're
goodness.
aware, we're the only ones that
Yeah,
are
yeah, we are.
aware. Uh but I don't know. I don't know. How would you know if a gorilla knows that?
Well, I mean, look it up,
Yeah.
Coco.
Okay.
It was amazing. She would go, "I'm crying, I'm sad because we're." It was,
That is
anyway, it's a good ending for this.
okay.
It's a fantastic law, man. He's made a believer out of me, Robert Greene. I, I think I can call him Robert by now. I've read so many of his books because I'm telling you, it was tedious.
Yeah.
The first part of that, and then when you start seeing the fall from grace and the mistakes he's making,
Yeah.
and you're saying, "Wait a minute, Mike Eisner, can't you see that's a mistake?" But he couldn't see it. He was in this grandiose state, you know, where he just couldn't see it. One bad mistake after another that took years to propagate the downfall, but you could tell it was a mistake because you're looking from the outside. It's like you're playing chess, right? Sometimes you're in the deep of the fight
You
You
don't
can't
see
see the
the.
moves, but somebody that's, watching from outside might be able to see it better, right? You just do the best you can with what you've got.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid. Move forward. Can't be afraid.
I really like what you said, and he talked about wiping the slate clean and coming in fresh. And that's what they say in martial arts. Just because the guy looks like small and doesn't look like a threat to you, you have to see them as the same level of threat as even the big guy, let's say. So everybody clean slate. Every situation, every project, clean slate.
That's beautiful,
Don't bring
Mike.
in your past.
Yeah. Well, I did it and it was a big mistake. It cost me 10 years.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.